Hello everyone and welcome back to Try Not to Lose All of Your Subscribers with One Video Challenge, Hard Mode. Today we're going to be arranging all the Spider-Man movies in a tier list, starting from 2002 Spider-Man, going up to the recent Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I thought it would be a good time to do this with Across the Spider-Verse coming out in theaters recently. It will give me an opportunity to talk about Across the Spider-Verse, but also reflect on all of the different Spider-Man movies we've gotten so far. So, let's jump straight into it with 2002's Spider-Man. Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire, the original. Now, coming fresh out the gate, this is my favorite Spider-Man movie to date. We may be jumping the gun a little bit here, but immediately I'm putting it in S tier. It's one of the two Spider-Man movies I have a poster of. Also, that's a drawing my brother did. Very nice. We got the OG Spider-Man poster, and we also have Into the Spider-Verse. These are probably my two favorites. But honestly, people like to hate on Tobey Maguire. People like to hate on Sam Raimi's style of directing. But I love this movie. I think it's a perfect origin story. I love the journey that Peter goes through. I think it's like the best Uncle Ben origin story we've gotten so far. I like the emotion that is in it. I like Peter's relationship with Aunt May and MJ. I think it's some of the best of those two characters that we get in the whole trilogy and then in all of the Spider-Man movies. But the action is incredible. The suit looks good. The score is phenomenal. Norman Osborn is a great character. I like Harry. I really just don't have complaints with this movie. And people like to clown on it. People like to clown on Tobey Maguire. I think he's fantastic in this movie. It's my favorite Spider-Man. And then we have Spider-Man 2, an incredible follow-up. Most people say it's better than the original Spider-Man. I might agree with that, but I prefer the first one. I think mainly because of just the sweeter moments we get in Spider-Man with Aunt May and MJ, like I was talking about. The slower, emotional scenes, I really like those. But Spider-Man 2 has them as well. Especially the scene with Uncle Ben in the car when he's having a vision and he's talking about how he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. It's an incredible scene. The whole struggle of Peter trying to balance his life and feeling like he can't be Spider-Man and Peter Parker, but then realizing that he can. It's just a really good narrative. Again, great score, really good action sequences. Doc Ock is great in this movie. And this one, I feel like it drags a little bit in the middle, so I'm not going to put it all the way in S, but I do think it's really good, and we're going to slap it in A tier. Spider-Man 3. This is where the hate begins for me. I can already feel it. I bask in the controversial takes. I think this is a B for me. Look, I know, it's a mess. Topher Grace was terrible. There's 3 villains in it. Emo Parker is a thing. We all know the complaints everyone has, but there's so much good in this movie that gets overlooked, I think. And so, in spite of all the mess, there's a lot of sweet moments. There's a lot of good action. I think the ending is really strong, actually. Sandman is phenomenal. One of my favorite villains in the series. Maybe my favorite. Really good music, my favorite film score of all time. I'm not joking. So, I know that it's a mess, but I'm going B, guys. Just bear with me on that. Hopefully I don't lose all my subscribers just yet. There's going to be more controversial takes coming ahead, just to let you know. But that's going to go in B for now. And realistically, I'd give it like a B-, but I still like it. The Amazing Spider-Man, I think, is going to be a similar rank to that, or a similar tier. It's not great, but it's good. I really like Andrew Garfield. He's the best actor to portray Spider-Man. He's not my favorite. I think Tobey's probably my favorite, but he has the best acting chops. Emma Stone is really good in this as well. I really love their relationship. That's the magic of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, is Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield. They were just incredible. They captured something truly magical in their relationship. this also has a good score that I like a lot. There's some good action. It's kind of a retelling of Spider-Man. It doesn't deviate that much, besides the whole Richard Parker storyline where Peter's trying to figure out who his dad was and the whole Oscorp backstory. I hate all that. I'm not gonna lie. It's just pointless to me. It's boring. It doesn't do anything for the character. But I did like Lizard. I thought Curtis Connors was a pretty good character. But I can't give this like super high praise. It's just, I think it's like just a solid B. I'm gonna put it ahead of Spider-Man 3 because it's probably better. And then we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Definitively the worst Spider-Man movie. People always talk about Spider-Man 3 being the worst. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is much worse than Spider-Man 3, if you ask me. Spider-Man 3 has a lot of redeeming aspects, I think. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has pretty much one redeeming aspect, and again, it's Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. Their chemistry carries this movie, but it's still just bad. It's too long. It's super convoluted. Electro is one of the worst villains ever. Harry Osborn, I hated that iteration of him. Again, it's a bunch of Oscorp, Richard Parker. Just blah. I hate thinking about all that stuff. But again, Gwen and Peter are so good. A lot of people clown on Gwen's death. They always make fun of the, oh, she snapped her neck. I laughed in the theater. I hate when people talk about that because to me it was extremely emotional. I was super attached to Peter and Gwen, and I think that scene is actually brilliantly done. I think it ends on a strong note with Gwen dying and then Peter learning to move on and still be Spider-Man in spite of that loss, in spite of that pain. I think that's actually the best part of the movie. But still, I'm thinking D for this. And it pains me because I really did like this when it came out. I really liked both of these movies, The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Again, I just loved Andrew and Emma. But it genuinely is just a bad movie. Barely any redeeming aspects, except I will give credit to Hans Zimmer for the score. And then I think the CG is actually insanely good. And then action sequences look great. Some of the coolest action sequences and web swinging, especially, of any Spider-Man we've gotten. But like ultimately, those little technical pieces don't do much for a really convoluted, messy, blah story. Okay, and then we reboot the series again with Spider-Man Homecoming. I just don't like the MCU Spider-Man. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. I had so much hope for Tom Holland, especially after seeing Civil War. I was like, whoa, this is a fresh take on this character. I like Tom Holland. He's really charismatic. And Tom still is really charismatic in this movie. Don't get me wrong. He's a good actor. But the way they wrote the character just made him seem so immature and irresponsible and just it was lighthearted, and I get that they were trying to go for that high school feel of kind of like a teen comedy coming of age movie, but ultimately I just felt like the tone was too light, a little bit too humorous, which is a problem I have with a lot of MCU movies. The tone just, like, moments don't feel that serious. But yeah, I didn't like the supporting characters. I thought MJ was unlikable. Ned is okay. His love interest in this movie is just honestly the most underdeveloped one-dimensional character of all time. I did like Vulture. I will say that. I didn't like Iron Man's presence in this movie that much. But I liked Vulture. And then there was one scene towards the end where Peter gets stuck under the rubble and he has to lift it up. He's like, come on, Spider-Man. Come on, Spider-Man. Love that scene. It was like one of the few moments where he felt like he had a true burden and he was finally living up to being that hero. But ultimately, I really just don't like this movie that much. I would give it like a low C. Definitely better than The Amazing Spider-Man 2 narratively, but honestly, if I had to choose between these two, which one to watch, I might choose The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Don't kill me for that. I'm just not a fan of the MCU Spider-Man. But then in between Homecoming and Far From Home, we have a masterpiece. Just a masterpiece on all levels. This is probably my second favorite Spider-Man movie. Although I do love Spider-Man 2. Into the Spider-Verse was just special. And I think part of the reason it was so impressive to me is because I didn't expect anything of it. I was like, animated Spider-Man, Sony Animations, what? And then somehow it was just, for a lot of people, probably the best Spider-Man movie ever made. I don't know if it's my favorite. I might be able to say it's the best one. I'm struggling between S and A. You know what? We're gonna put it in S. It really just, it didn't do anything wrong. There are no flaws in this movie. The storytelling is impeccable. The characters are all super likable. Miles became one of my favorite protagonists so quickly. He was so charismatic, had a great journey. All the other Spider-Men are super fun and interesting. I love Peter B. Parker in this movie. This is one of the things I missed about Across the Spider-Verse, is the role that Peter B. Parker played. And I know Across the Spider-Verse was more about Gwen, and I still do love Gwen. I loved her in Into the Spider-Verse too. But there was something so special about Miles and Peter and that mentorship that Peter took on, trying to train him and guide him throughout this journey. It was really special. I love that scene at the end where he's like, how do I know I'm not going to mess it up again? He's like, you don't. It's a leap of faith. He's like, not bad, kid. I love it, dude. And the animation obviously is incredible. Soundtrack in the composition department and like the songs by popular artist department, both really good. Pacing is really nice and tight. Keeps a great tone the whole time. Balances the comedy with the emotion and the seriousness. Wonderful movie. But I still have to say Spider-Man's a little bit better. And then we have Far From Home. Do not kill me for this, guys. I'm going to put it below The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I genuinely just... Where Homecoming, I was just like, I just didn't really like it. Far From Home, I was like, this is bad. This is a bad movie. They managed to take one of my favorite actors of all time, Jake Gyllenhaal, and make him look like a B-list actor. Like, he's still a good actor, but the way they wrote this character was so corny and cliche. I was like, this is what y'all did with him? This is what y'all did with Mysterio, one of the coolest and most interesting Spider-Man villains? And it was just the same story of Peter just being irresponsible and selfish. It wasn't characteristic of Spider-Man in my eyes. And then, yeah, Nick Fury being in it. And I was like, yo, this is going to be dope because Spider-Man is going on a field trip. We get to see him like interact in all these different locations in Europe. And then it just didn't do anything with it. Like, whereas I feel like Sam Raimi or Mark Webb or Sony Animations would have done something really cool with having Spider-Man play in a different environment. Ultimately, the action, the set pieces, they're so bland. It just has that MCU spin of being bland and just bleh. Super forgettable movie, if you ask me. Again, I just don't like how they portray Peter, mostly. And the supporting characters are just, I would legitimately rather watch The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I don't like Far From Home at all. I can admit that Homecoming is better, but these two, as much as people want to say Far From Home's pretty good, or really good, I'm just not on board with that. I'm sorry. But then we have No Way Home. This is where stuff gets murky for me. Because No Way Home is definitively the best of that trilogy. I don't think that's debatable. The MCU trilogy, No Way Home, is by far the best one. However, they had to rely on material that wasn't originally MCU material. They had to bring back old characters. And the old characters do so much for this movie. If this was just another Tom Holland MCU team up with another superhero, it would not get near as much praise as it does. But I will say they handled the characters pretty well. They treated Toby and Andrew surprisingly very well. The scene where they're kind of relating to Tom, I'm just going to keep referring to them as their actor names, because if I said the part where the Peters relate to Peter, it'd be too confusing. Where the part where Toby and Andrew relate to Peter, Tom, and they kind of express like, yeah, we've been through this too. I was responsible for Uncle Ben's death or for Gwen's death. That scene is so good. And when Andrew's like, I got rageful, I got bitter. I just don't want you to end up like me. Oh, dude, I teared up. It was impeccable. But if these two were not in it, if Toby and Andrew were not in it, and some of the old villains, like Willem Dafoe, they relied so much on him, this movie would not be very good. And as much as I think it ended on a really, really strong note, as much as I love that they actually pushed Tom's character to a point where he was actually maturing, doing the hard thing, but making the right choice, as much as I love that, the first two acts of this movie, I would say, are very, very mid. I hated the Doctor Strange dynamic. They ruined Doctor Strange, honestly. He became super just jokey and immature too, even though he's like the sorcerer supreme of the freaking galaxy or whatever. They ruined him. MJ and Ned are still just... I liked them more in this movie, but they're... By the end, I did feel for them a little bit more because, again, Tom had to make the ultimate sacrifice. But this movie is such a mixed bag to me. Again, very forgettable action scenes. The score is lacking. And the reason I point that out is because I like the scores in all of these movies except for the MCU ones. I just think the MCU Spider-Man is very bland until the end of this movie where they finally make him make a hard choice and he grows up. With all that said, sorry for rambling, everybody. Oh, man, I don't know if I can go B. C+. You know what? I will go B just because it ended really well. I loved the ending of Tom finally doing something that actually required responsibility and sacrifice and selflessness, and then him being on his own, going to the coffee shop with MJ and being like, their lives might be better without me, which is a really sad realization, but I was really surprised and impressed with them that they went that direction. Finally, we are at Across the Spider-Verse. This one it's kind of tough for me because I love it. I genuinely do love it. I think it's another masterpiece. However, I don't think it's flawless like Into the Spider-Verse was, or like how I perceive Spider-Man. I have issues with this movie, mainly the beginning of it feeling overly comedic, and then having like a giant shift in tone at some point in the movie where it was like super high stakes. The multiverse is going to collapse unless Miles, blah, blah, blah. The tone just wasn't as consistent. The pacing wasn't as tight as Into the Spider-Verse. And maybe I shouldn't compare it to Into the Spider-Verse because it's its own movie, but I can't help but be like, I don't think it's as flawless as Into the Spider-Verse was. That being said, I still love it. Gwen and Miles are two of my favorite characters ever, and they were both really good in this movie. Their chemistry is great, and I love them. I love how it was actually focused on Gwen. I didn't think I would like that. At the beginning, I was like, why is this opening with Gwen giving her a monologue? But I like how they tied it in. It was as much Gwen's story as it was Miles, but they managed to balance that pretty well. I didn't like the Spot. I thought he was too jokey, and that's literally in the movie. They talk about how he's like, you just think I'm a joke. You just think I'm a villain of the week. And they open with him being so corny and goofy. And then he's like, I'm going to destroy your world. I don't like that shift in tone. It didn't feel natural to me. The second act with Spider-Man in India felt a little drawn out, and I didn't love that take. I liked Spider-Man India, and I liked Hobie Brown too. I liked the characters they introduced. I thought Miguel was really cool. I thought he was a great antagonist. But the Spot, And again, of course, this is going to be a spoiler if you haven't seen it. So you may want to click off or pause the video, whatever. It doesn't have a legitimate ending. It ends on a cliffhanger, so it didn't feel like a complete story. Some people like that because they're like, yo, it just hyped me up for the next one. It hyped me up for the next one too, but still I was like, we need like a satisfying conclusion, and I felt like we didn't get that. So the ending, it being a little bit jumbled, the pacing didn't feel as tight. Like I said, it felt long. Even though I was thoroughly entertained from start to finish, don't get me wrong, I just had a few minor issues. And for those reasons, I can't put it up in S tier, but I think I can put it above Spider-Man 2. So I think it's going to go there. I would give it like an A, where Spider-Man 2 would be like an A minus, maybe. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Across the Spider-Verse and on all the Spider-Man movies that we've gotten so far. Hopefully you don't want to kill me yet. I know that I'm extremely biased, obviously, and a lot of people would have a different arrangement, especially of the MCU movies. Personally, I'm just not a fan, but hopefully I provided at least enough justification for you to understand where I'm coming from. If not, that's okay too. But yeah, that's gonna do it, people. That's my tier list of all the Spider-Man movies. How would you rearrange my entries? What would you put up in S? What would you put down in F? I didn't put any in F. I don't know if that's controversial or not. A lot of people would probably put Spider-Man 3 in F or The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But yeah, how would you arrange your Spider-Man movies in a tier list form? What's your favorite Spider-Man movie? What's your least favorite Spider-Man movie? What do you think of Across the Spider-Verse? Let me know in the comments below. And also, let me know what you want to see me do next with this channel. And I'll see you in the next one.